What's up, guys? Welcome back to Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, today we are breaking down the Colts 2021 draft class. And guys, what I do with these videos is I give you the breakdown of the first 3 rounds, because that's really where you're getting the impact players for the most part. We'll touch on the rest of the draft class here and there, and then at the end I'll give you my grades and everything. Let's get started real quick. Before I do, if you do enjoy this kind of content, like, subscribe, all that stuff really help me out. I would appreciate it. But let's get right into it. Let's put up the entire Colts draft class first, break it down here. So just interesting. I really love what they did as far as like attacking their needs, because the Colts don't really have a ton of needs, but when you look at the needs they do have, defensive end, defensive line, that was like the clear biggest flaw to their game, I feel like, and I think something they've been trying to attack the past couple of years, making the trade for DeForest Buckner with the Chiefs. Basically spent a first-round pick last year on interior defensive line. Now they're attacking the defensive end position with a Kwity Paye and an Obo Odinagbu. I'm sorry, I'm going to struggle with names like that. I do apologize. But we'll talk about them in a little bit more depth. So I like, that's their first 2 picks. And like I said, we'll get to them. I love that they go tight end 4th round. And I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about this guy, but just knowing the Colts and knowing how important that tight end position is to the way they run the offense, regardless of Mo Alley-Cox kind of showing up this past year and still having a Jack Doyle, they still are going to need depth there. And I think you can expect the Colts to, target tight end in the mid rounds of the draft, maybe more than we would expect most teams to, because it's just so important for that offense. And then of course, hey, bring in a Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. Listen, this is a guy who I think a lot of people had mixed reviews on. We'll see what comes from this. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett's down in Miami now with the Dolphins. You have a guy in Carson Wentz who does have those injury concerns that you're worried about, and really no other proven commodities at the backup quarterback position. So now you're probably going to go into the 2021 season with obviously Wentz as the starter. You're going to have a Jacob Eason, who they got last year in the mid rounds, as their probably backup. I would assume. I would assume, because they didn't touch the quarterback position other than grabbing a Carson Wentz. They didn't grab any backup. They didn't bring in a Jacoby Brissett, anything like that. I would assume those moves make me think that the Colts feel comfortable enough saying Jacob Eason's going to be the backup, and then obviously Ehlinger, just another guy to come in and compete. Maybe we'll see what happens. 6th round pick. There's never a whole lot of concern there, but kind of a bigger name from college, so I had to at least bring it up, right? Be interesting to see what happens with him. So overall, look, I think they made some good moves. We'll get into my overall grade for this entire draft class and everything. Let's get right into Kwity Paye and break down this 1st round pick. Kwity Paye is just one of those guys. He is a physical specimen, explosive first step, has really good power and finesse moves, fast hand. He just has all the physical traits to be a very, very good defensive end in the NFL. And I think his play style will fit the Colts, the way the Colts will play defense, right? This isn't a guy that I would expect to get like 12 sacks a year, right? Like, it's not really his style, but he's a big, physical defensive end who can set the edge very well, do all of those things right. Now the cons, obviously, this is a guy whose traits at this point, I mean, he's raw mechanically. He doesn't have great instincts, I didn't think, from watching the film, and only 19 starts. And I would say I would go along with those 19 starts. A lot of the sacks that he got in this 2020 season before he had a small injury and ends up opting out. I would say a lot of the sacks and production that he got, at least this year, the games that I watched, some on stunts. It wasn't like just him just destroying a left tackle and getting to the quarterback, right? It would be a stunt or an effort play or something along those lines. So I think that should be brought into the conversation. Overall, I look at Kwity Paye. Some are going to say he fell, right? Some are going to say, oh, he was supposed to go top 15 or whatever. You can go back and look at my draft profile and the many times on the podcast I looked at it. This is exactly where I thought he would go. Like this, to me, I even said on the podcast at one point, like, okay, he's not going to go past the Colts. I didn't think like this he fits the Colts perfectly from what he can be, what he projects to be in the NFL, and what the Colts like at that defensive line, defensive end position. And really, like, this was a guy that I compared similarly to a Cleveon Chason last year in different ways, obviously, but a similar type of guy as far as like a guy who has all of these traits, just physical guy, and I thought was being a little bit overhyped early on. Chason falls to 20, and and Kwity Paye falls to 21. And with that projection, I think it's fair to say, listen, I don't expect a big first year. K'Lavon Chaisson didn't have a big first year for Jacksonville. Now, I would expect K'Lavon Chaisson to grow into that role for Jacksonville. Obviously, new defense, new organization, and this might hinder his production a little bit, or his growth as a player. I don't know. That remains to be seen. But I mean, we're not going to see that issue with Kwity. He is not in a situation where we can expect him to be in a different defensive scheme or anything like that in a couple years. Like, the Colts are good. They're going to be working with Frank Reich and the gang for a while. I would expect, at least. I think this was a great pick for the Colts. Obviously, a combination of value and granted, I said this is exactly where I thought he would go. He could have gone like anywhere top 15 and nobody would have batted an eye, right? But he get them at 21. That's a great value for the Colts, and also a need and a player that fits their style and their scheme. And then let's move on to the next player they got, their second round pick out of Vanderbilt. And I'm going to say basically the same kind of things, honestly. Dayo Ogbonnaigbebu. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm terrible with those kind of names. I do apologize. But defensive end out of Vanderbilt, and another guy I would say just a physical specimen. Now, I do think I don't know this, but I believe his length is a little bit longer. I think he has longer arms than a Kwity Paye. But this is another guy who's a special size athlete kind of combo. Has a good versatility. I think he's quicker than you would expect, as far as like from when I put the film on. I was like, man, he's a little bit more explosive than I was thinking for 6'5", 285. Right? Like, he was certainly, I think, a physical specimen in a lot of ways. Now, the dangers, the downside, yeah, he had that Achilles injury, and he's not going to be there for week 1, I don't think. And we'll see on that. I don't know the exact medical records or anything like that, but I would expect, another guy who's probably not going to be super impactful year 1, and that's just is what it is. And I did find, like, I thought there were some balance issues and other smaller things, but at the end of the day, another guy who's just a physical specimen and a mold of a guy who could be really good in the future. And I think that's kind of what the Colts were looking for and targeted this first round. Hey, we need to get better at defensive line, defensive end specifically. They can survive right now. They'll be fine, I think, for the most part. But there was certainly a position where it's like, okay, we need to attack this position. We need to hit on one of these two guys. And I think they will. I think one of these guys are going to turn into really good NFL players. Probably both of them, to be totally honest. Like, Kwity Paye obviously has all the hype. I look at Dayo as a guy who maybe, slightly less impressive physically, but honestly a different type of guy, but the same kind of story as far as like how I would expect him to grow in the league. And it's a projection. It's a huge projection for him, for how he can, transition to the NFL environment and be, that classic defensive end in that 4-3 front. And I think, there's a little bit of versatility. He can do a lot of different things, and we'll see exactly how they decide to use him. And with their third round pick, they did spend that on the Carson Wentz trade, obviously the 2021 third, and then we'll see what happens with the compensatory pick, either a first or second next year. We'll see there. But that's the end of the guys I'm going to do a deep dive on. Let's transition to some of my grades. I'm going to do my best and worst move here. And with their best pick, I'm going to be a little bit surprising here, maybe, as their safety out of Florida, Sean Davis, 5th rounder. I actually really thought he was going to be a back into the 3rd round type of guy. Obviously falls all the way to 5th. Maybe that's just a miscalculation on my grade or my assessment of him. I don't know, but I really like the player. Is one of the guys that I think the player I really like. And then I look at the situation, obviously Millie Cooker's gone, the 1st round pick from a few years ago, had a bunch of injury issues. He's gone. They drafted Julian Blackmon last year, 3rd rounder out of Utah, who we'll see what happens with him. I will say he didn't pop in any of the games that I watched, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on the Colts safety, but obviously I do think they do need help at that position. And I just look at that pick as a guy like, he could be like a year 1 sneaky starter from day 1 type of guy who's like a 5th round pick. Nobody's expecting to be anything special anyway. And I don't know. That's just one of my takes. Hey, if I'm right, I'll clip this out and put it everywhere. Like, I called it. But yeah, I don't know, for some weird reason there, I feel good about that pick, and I think he has a chance to start from day 1. So that's my best move there. And then my worst move, it's not getting an offensive lineman, right? And really, I mean, this is nitpicky. They got one in the 7th round, but they were not able to replace an Anthony Costanzo, who does retire this year. And that was something I was certainly expecting pretty early, right? I thought they were going to be in play for offensive line at 21 overall. And then the second round, I really thought that's where they would have gone, right? And listen, beyond the second round, it gets so crazy to like argue value and like, oh, all these things. So like, I think the Colts are just smart and said, okay, we're going to take our best player available. And really, you look at the offensive linemen that went in the second round. I'm going to put it up. You look at all of those names, right? There's a huge run on offensive linemen. I think there was a ton of value in the second round of offensive linemen if you're one of those teams that got one. They picked 54th overall. Right, and two more go in the end of the second round, but those were centers. They didn't need help interior. They needed one tackle. So the Titans take Dylan Radnez at one pick ahead of them. I think the Colts were kind of looking at it and like, man, they probably were watching. They probably saw the 50th pick come off the board, and they were 51. They might have had both those guys, Sam Cosmi, Dylan Radnez on their board, and said, okay, one of those guys should fall. We got 4 picks. 3 picks, whatever. One of them should fall. They both go. And I don't know that. That's just conjecture. But I'm saying there's a good chance that they probably thought, okay, one of these tackles, we probably have 5 or 6 starting in the second round, and they might have just all been gone. And so I understand, don't reach on a tackle, right? So I say worst move that they weren't able to get one. There's a lot of things they could have done. They could have traded up. There's a lot of other options there. But I do understand at least, okay, value wasn't there. Don't reach. They have a good offensive line altogether. I would assume, and I don't know this at all, I would assume there's probably somebody behind Anthony Castonzo, a swing tackle or something like that they feel at least comfortable enough that they can go into the season with him as the starter and feel good about it, or at least feel okay about it. Obviously, I don't know that, but I would think, having not addressed that hole, there has to be somebody on the roster they at least they know a little bit more about him than me or the average fan or anything like that. But those are my best and worst. Let's move on to my grades. And guys, I do my grades a little bit different. I do break it down into 3 different things. First grade here is the players. This is just the players they got, the assortment of players. I like them, B+. I really do. I think they got a good group of guys. I think first 2 rounds, I don't think they got guys that are going to be like difference makers years 1. And I know that maybe that's like, sacrilegious to say about Kwity Paye, but again, I kind of made that comparison to K'Lavon Chaisson, and I'm going to kind of stick with that. And to be clear, I'm not saying those 2 players are the same person. I'm saying from a developmental standpoint, I expect them to develop the same kind of way. So that's kind of my take there, and that's why I'm not expecting incredible production year 1. And I think that's at least fair to say. And then obviously their second rounder has the Achilles injury. We can't expect much for year 1. That just is what it is. So that's the only reason it's maybe not even higher. But overall, I love their players. I think they got better over the weekend. So that's really all you can ask for. Moving on to draft value. Yeah, they hit this out of the park. I mean, really every pick they made, solid, very very good value everywhere they got. They either got guys that were right in the range, in my opinion, or they really got lucky, or not lucky, but found values in the draft late. And I mentioned Sean Davis, safety out of Florida. Samuel Ehlinger, third, not a guy that I'm really expecting a whole lot of in the NFL, but to get him in the 6th round, I do think there's some value there. And that I think there's something to be said about those kind of picks, and that did kind of factor into this grade and why it's an A. It's a good pick. And then finally, needs, I'm giving it a B+. All right, and the reason it's not an A, I already mentioned, they didn't attack the offensive line. They didn't attack the offensive tackle until their last pick, their last pick in the 7th round. That's when they took an offensive lineman. So that doesn't really count for me. So yeah, that's why it's not in the A range. But the reason it's a B+, and the reason I still really like their value is because every single pick they made, every single player that they got, I see exactly how he fits into the roster, right? And I see a world where each one of these guys starts, and then outside of especially their first 4 picks, their first, they obviously didn't have a third, so 1 through 5, I see exactly how they fit into the offense. I like the value. I'm good with it, and I like they're getting a need. They're getting a player that I think has a chance to be an impact guy on their roster, right? So all of those things, hey, they did really good. This is a solid draft from the Colts. Another solid outing. This is such a good football team. I really believe, I've been saying it for 2 years now, that the Colts have a chance to be Super Bowl contenders, and I've just been waiting for them to take that next step, right? They've been really good. Then obviously, I think quarterback held them back last year. Maybe we'll see what Carson Wentz can bring. I really believe he has a chance to bring next level production for the Colts. I really think that's a possibility for him. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Please, if you enjoy this kind of content, like this video, subscribe to the channel. All of those things really help me out. I've been growing a lot the past couple months, and I'd really like to keep it going. So thank you so much for watching this long. I'm gonna get out of here. We'll see you next time. Peace.